Hello children, my name is Arifa from AGS, only destination for learning. This is my fifth video on the chapter called The Rise of Nationalism in Europe. The links of the other four videos are available in the description box of my YouTube channel. Please go through them. See, in the previous videos I have discussed about the impact of French Revolution upon the European people, as well as we have also seen about the revolutionaries and the inspiration they derived from the uh, independence of Greece, as well as establishment of Louis Philippe as a constitutional monarch. In today's video we shall continue the chapter with the topic called Romantic Imagination and National Feeling. What does this topic emphasizes upon, that we shall discuss in detail. See, often not only the territorial expansion and also the wars led to the nationalism, took the people towards the nationalism. See, I told you that nationalism is nothing but the idea of common past or a particular geographical place having its own past, its own culture and its own identity. That is called as nationalism, and it is also a kind of patriotism associated with their common entities. So not only often wars and territorial expansion led to the nationalism in Europe, but culture also played a most important role. How the culture played a most important role, and what was its strategy in bringing the people towards the nationalism, that we shall see now. See, art, poetry, stories and music helped the people to shape their feelings towards the nationalism. Most of the poets, they wrote influential poems so that most of the people can strive towards the idea of nationalism. And most of the musicians, they played such a music so that people can associate themselves to their past. People can associate themselves towards the common identity which is related to their past, which is related to their country. So often these poets, artists and different musicians, they try to shape the feelings of nationalism of the people. They try to mold the ideas of these people towards a nationalism. Apart from all this, their major intention or objective of these poets and musicians was to create a sense of shared identity. See, for a country to be to have a common identity, to have a common past is most important in order to arrive at a destination called nationalism. So, to have a common past and collective cultural heritage is the most important for a country to call as a nation, for a country to arrive at a destination called nationalism. So the work of these poets, artists and different musicians was to take the people of entire Europe towards a nationalism. So this culture played a most important role in that too by using two different entities. First one was associated with the folklore, whereas the second one is associated with the language. How the folk songs, folk poetry, folk dances and language played their important role or played a vital role in nationalism is, see, often people believed that going back to the folk songs, folk poetry and folk dances will put some torchlight or will put some importance upon their past, so that they can recall their past, they can learn something which was most important from the past, and they wanted to collect some shared identity through this folklores, maybe with the songs, maybe with the poetry, maybe with the dances. They wanted to collect some identity among themselves. That's why they have used the identity of this folk songs, and one of the best example was of a person called Karol Kurpinski. So you can see here, this Karol Kurpinski, he took this national struggle of nationalism intensively, and he made a few of the folk dances into a national symbols. See, whatever folk dances are there here, these folk dances were turned into a national symbols by this Karol Korpinski, and he intensified the struggle of nationalism in entire Europe. Thus, these folk songs, folk poetry, and folk dances played most important role in towards the nationalism. Whereas the second one was this language. What is this language and how did it play the most important role is, say if you go back to the year of 1815, in the year of 1815, as we all know that there was a Treaty of Vienna, isn't it? According to this Treaty of Vienna, which formulated in the year of 1815, this Poland, which was an independent nation, it was made into several fragments, and each and every fragment was given to a great powers. According to the beginning of the 19th century, great powers are nothing but Russia, Prussia, and Austria. These three were the most important great powers, and according to these great powers, Poland was no more an independent geographical entity now, or an independent geographic country. So this Poland, it was divided, and all its fragments were given to the great powers, and among which this Russia was a most dominant. Russia, as you all know, it was one of the superpower of the medieval period. How America, it is a superpower, or it is called as superpower at present. In the similar manner, Russia was called as a superpower in the entire Europe during that period. And Russia being the most dominant country among these great powers, it forcibly thrown out the Polish language from the schools and colleges of Poland, and instead of Polish language, Russian language was forcibly imposed upon each and every citizen. Maybe in schools, maybe in colleges, maybe in churches, everywhere, everybody were forced to use the Russian language on a large scale instead of using a Polish language. This created certain rage against these Russian people by the Polish. When they were divided, when they were not given a title of geographical nation, Poland people did not raise their voice. But when the matter came to their own language, when the matter came to their own identity, then they struggled and they revolted against this Russian people. And most of the people, especially the clergymen, they started to use this language as a weapon against the Russian dominance. They started to use this Polish language in the religious addressings, in church positions. In most of their lectures, Polish language was used as a symbol of a resistance against the Russian dominance, and most of the people, they used this language as a weapon to attain the nationalism. Thus, the folklore and language played two vital roles in the formation of nationalism in entire Europe. But the story does not continue in the same manner, as the Europeans, they had one new challenge ahead during the period of 1830s. What is this challenge? Let us see now. See, during the period of 1830s, that is during the early 18th century, there was a huge increase in the population of entire Europe, usually which is a threat to the progress of any nation or a continent. So the same thing happened during the period of early 19th century in entire Europe, and there was a burst in the entire population of the Europe, which led to the three different consequences in Europe. The first one is of a food crisis. See, you know that whenever there is an increase in the population, the first threat comes to the food of the people. Everybody cannot get a sufficient amount of food to have. That's why people suffer from hunger and starvation on a large scale. Same thing happened in entire Europe. So if a population increases rapidly, food production also should match the increase in population. If both they are not there in a pace, then what is going to happen? Most of the population, they remain hunger, they die in starvation, and a severe food crisis arises in the entire country or a continent. The same thing happened in Europe. Because of increase in population, there was a huge food crisis all over the continent. Whereas the second one was, there was a severe unemployment. Most of the population could not get a proper employment. Most of the population did not get a suitable work to do and feed their families. See, it is usually impossible to provide employment for the entire population in any country. For everyone, you cannot provide an employment. Few will be having their livelihood through the different kinds of businesses. Few they'll have their own self-employment, or they will work here and there by using their professional skills or something. If this is the case in general, then during the situations of severe outbreak of population, it is hardly impossible to imagine an good employment to each and everyone. So unemployment was a case which emerged after the increase in population throughout the entire Europe. Whereas along with this food crisis and unemployment, what happened? Large number of the people, they started to migrate from rural areas to urban areas in search of better livelihood and better standards of life. So most of the people, they started to migrate towards urban areas from rural areas in search of good employment and good shelter. And most of the population, they started to live in a slums of the urban areas, which were usually not clean, which were usually very congested. They used to adjust in a small crampy areas for the sake of employment, for the sake of better livelihood. Along with these people, there were few small producers in the urban areas who were generally involved in textile production and all. See, these small producers, usually most of their occupation was associated with the textile industry, that is of making up of different clothes and selling them to the most of the people. These small producers who were involved in such activities, they faced a stiff competition from the people, especially from the industries. See, the period of this 1830s is not only meant for the increase in population, but it is also meant for industrialization. See, what is this industrialization is nothing but, see, 18th century, it is a period which witnessed the rapid industrialization throughout the entire Europe. That is, setting up of different industries and manufacturing finished goods at a cheaper cost. So these industries, they used to provide the branded items at a cheaper cost when compared to those producers who used to give quality goods which were costlier, which were handmade. So people often preferred the products of in these industries which had a similar quality as of these small producers, but the cost was very much cheaper. So often people, they preferred these industries for the sake of the better products at a cheaper rate. So most of the small producers, they lost even their livelihood. They lost even the bread which they used to get by selling the products which they made by using a hand. So such a situation led to a hunger, hardship among the people, and people couldn't tolerate such conditions there. So whatever situation we saw here in the case of Europe, the same thing it happened in France during the period of 1848. In 1848 in France, the similar situation arose everywhere. There was a food crisis associated with that. There was a bad harvest. Harvest was not good, and unemployment was severe among the youth of the entire France. And people, they enraged against the Louis Philippe, who was a constitutional monarchy of France. See, I told you that Treaty of Vienna 1815, with the Treaty of Vienna which took place in 1815, it actually restored the Bourbon family in France initially. But later, these revolutionaries, they made this Louis Philippe as a constitutional monarchy by overthrowing the king of the Bourbon family. So this Louis Philippe, with all the rage, by facing the rage of the people, he was forced to flee out of the France. He escaped from France, fearing that people may attack him or people may throw him out of his throne. So initial impact of the similar situation in France was the Louis Philippe was forced to flee out of the nation. Whereas the second impact was the National Assembly. See, you have some idea about National Assembly, right? Third estate people, against all the social benefits, against all the differences in social and economic as well as cultural background in France, third estate people, they formed this National Assembly, new political body. This National Assembly proclaimed itself as republic. See, republic is nothing but electing the head of a nation, usually a president, not but that president should not be a hereditary person. So National Assembly proclaimed itself as a republic where head of a nation is a elected member, and this National Assembly, it granted a suffrage to all adults who are above 21 years. See, this is suffrage but not universal adult suffrage, because universal adult suffrage is that one where each and every person who is above 18 years or some particular age is given voting rights, irrespective of any kind of discriminations, maybe the caste, maybe the religion, creed, place of birth, or gender. Irrespective of anything, a person is granted his own voting rights. But this is not universal, because only the adult males, that too who were only about 21 years, they were allowed to cast their vote. Women and all, they were excluded completely. So only adult males who are about 21 years were granted voting rights during the period of 1848 by the National Assembly. This is how the period of this 1830s, or the initial period of the 19th century, it was called as the period of hunger, hardship, and popular revolt, as most of the people, they revolted against the existing king. This is how most of the challenges were faced by the European people in order to move towards the idea of nationalism. Along with all these, there were even a separate class of people called liberals. See, we studied about revolutionaries, we studied about the examples of folklore and language, and we have even seen about the impact of increase in population all over the Europe. In the next video, we shall study about the liberals, who were one more category of the people in entire Europe. What was their part, or what was their role towards the nationalism, and how did they work in order to achieve a nationalism, that we shall see in next video. Hope you understood. If you like my videos, please like them, share them, and subscribe them. Please share about my channel to most of your friends whom you know, so that they can use my videos, they can feel that my videos are quite useful. Thank you.